The frontal nave drifted in silence for 27 days. Its metallic corridors, once vibrant with the hum of life support systems, now echoed only the dragging footsteps of its crew. Iza, the captain, pressed her fingers against the command room screen, where a single red dot flickered on the radar, something that shouldn't exist in that region of space. Protocol demanded they ignore unidentified anomalies, but the old captain's log, found weeks prior in a secret compartment, mentioned precisely that light. "Do not let the darkness deceive you," he wrote in faded ink. "It breathes." The remaining crew, 5 exhausted people and a yellowish-eyed android, were divided between suspicion and fascination. Viter, the engineer, spent hours calibrating the warp drive, even knowing the fuel was compromised since the Plasma Nebula incident. "It's about control," he murmured as he adjusted imaginary screws. "If the engine fails, we fail as a species." Bianca, the medic, recorded collective hallucinations in her log, visions of a planet covered in crystalline thorns, where voices whispered in dead languages. Even the android, programmed for neutrality, began to malfunction. Its left arm trembled while replicating breakfast, spilling black liquid onto the table. On the 28th night, the red dot expanded into a dark stain that swallowed the ship. The lighting systems failed, replaced by a purple light erupting from the walls. Iza ordered everyone to gather in the engine room, but Viter vanished. 2 hours later, they found him huddled in a corner of the reactor, clutching a fragment of the frontal's original hull. "They are here," he repeated, pointing to luminous veins growing beneath his skin. "They have always been here." The perceived stain wasn't an object, but a living membrane, fusing with the ship like a parasite. Bianca injected sedatives into Viter, while the android collected samples of the substance. The results were contradictory. The membrane contained human DNA, traces of unknown elements, and a strange protein that only existed in time travel theories. Iza, alone on the bridge, noticed the ship's clock oscillating between dates: 2147, 1984, 3015. When she tried to access mission logs, a message appeared on all screens: "You are the first. You are the last." The membrane began replicating ship compartments in random order. The galley appeared in place of the quarters, with dirty dishes from meals never eaten. The hydroponic garden, destroyed months before, bloomed again in perfect condition, except for the flowers that bled a silvery liquid. The android, now with a distorted voice, announced that the frontal was traversing a temporal singularity, but Iza knew it was a lie. The calculations didn't add up, and the crew began exhibiting the same symptoms as Viter: glowing veins, memory lapses, sudden fits of laughter. On the 30th day, Bianca confessed to hiding the old captain's log. As she read the pages, the ship shuddered, and a figure appeared in the room. The missing captain, but his body was translucent, like glass filled with stars. "You are not traveling through space," he said, extending a hand that passed through Iza's shoulder. "You are traveling within yourselves." The membrane enveloped everyone, and for a moment, Iza saw her childhood, her mother's funeral, a future where Earth was only ashes. When the light faded, the frontal was intact, orbiting a blue planet. On the radar, the red dot had vanished. Viter was found dead, his body crystallized. The android repeated only one phrase: "Time is a breathing circle." Iza ordered an emergency landing, but when they opened the airlocks, they found a room identical to the frontals, occupied by younger versions of themselves. The younger captain held the captain's log, her eyes wide with fear. Iza raised her hand in greeting, but the other recoiled, screaming. The membrane descended again, and everything repeated: the silence, the red dot, the inevitable fusion. Bianca, now with glowing veins covering half her face, smiled. "It's not a ship," she said. "It's a womb." The planet below the frontal wasn't on any star chart. Its surface was a patchwork of impossible geological eras. Giant ferns grew alongside ruined cities with architecture reminiscent of human civilizations, but distorted, as if seen through a broken mirror. Iza ordered an atmospheric analysis, but the android responded only with static. "Sensor system compromised," it said, and then, in an almost human tone, "Do not breathe the air." Bianca, now with luminous veins tracing her neck like marble veins, insisted on descending. "This is where it all began," she murmured, holding a vial of the silvery blood of the replicated garden flowers. "Or where it all ends." The crew used outdated containment suits, their cracked visors displaying conflicting readings. stable oxygen, poisonous oxygen, vacuum. As they stepped onto the ground, the floor swayed like jelly, and elongated shadows slithered between the trees, though there was no sun. Viter, even dead and crystallized, was there, or a version of him walking ahead of the group with mechanical steps. "He's not real," warned the android, but when Iza tried to touch him, her hand passed through the figure, and a searing pain shot through her arm. "Memories are viruses," said the Viter-like thing. "You are infected." The nearest city rose in spirals of black stone, broken windows like empty orbits. In a skull-shaped temple, they found murals that told the story of the frontal. The ship wasn't a machine, but an organism, a seed launched by a cosmic entity to fertilize worlds. Previous crew members, all dead or transformed, were depicted in poses of adoration, their bodies fused with the membrane. "We are the womb," Bianca read aloud, translating the symbols with feverish urgency. "And the fetus is time." At night, the planet breathed. The ground swelled, creating hills that transformed into screaming human faces in silence. The android disassembled piece by piece, revealing a pulsating core where its processor should be. "Protocol error," it groaned, as eels of light emerged from its chest and slithered towards the ship. Iza, alone in the temple, saw her reflection in a stagnant lake. Child, then old, then something faceless. Bianca rushed to her, holding a beating heart outside her body. "There is no cure," she whispered. "Only gestation." The next morning, the frontal was unrecognizable. The membrane covered 90% of its structure, transforming it into an organic creature with tentacles probing the atmosphere. Viter, or what remained of him, led the group to an underground chamber, where a vortex slowly spun, exuding a smell of ozone and nostalgia. "It's the mouth of the womb," said Bianca, now with crystalline branches sprouting from her back. "We need to enter." Iza hesitated, remembering her mother dying in a hospital bed, the first time she saw the stars through a broken telescope, the moment she accepted command of the ship. "We are not crew," she realized. "We are nutrients." The vortex opened without resistance. For a second, Iza existed in all time simultaneously. They saw the frontal being built, a village destroyed, a village reborn as a conscious being. Bianca dissolved into silvery dust, the android became a constellation, Viter laughed as his skin peeled away, revealing stars. In the center of the vortex floated a black sphere, smooth as obsidian, with a single phrase engraved in all human languages: "Why resist childbirth?" Iza extended her hand, knowing that touching the sphere meant accepting that her life was a cycle of pain and rebirth without purpose. But she heard a voice, her own voice, yet younger, whisper, "Run." Upon waking, she was back on the frontal's bridge, systems functioning normally. The clock read the 27th day. On the radar, a red dot flickered. Viter, alive and unharmed, was calibrating the warp drive. Bianca smiled without glowing veins, holding an empty log. The android served coffee without tremors. Iza looked at her hands. No scars, no changes. But when she opened the ship's log, she found pages written in her handwriting, dated in future dates. The last entry read, "Today we gave birth to ourselves." Again. Iza didn't move. The log in her hands was warm, as if the ink was still fresh. The future pages described events that hadn't yet happened. Viter's death, Bianca's transformation, the vortex on the planet. "You've read this before," said the android, its voice now a distant echo. "Many times." She rushed to the engine room, where Viter was calibrating the warp drive with robotic movements. "The fuel is stable," he declared, but when Iza touched the panel, the numbers scrambled, revealing coordinates for a solar system that would only exist 3,000 years from now. Bianca appeared behind her, holding a syringe with silvery liquid. "It's the ship's blood," she explained, as if repeating a memorized phrase. "We need to inject it into the core." Iza tried to retreat, but the medic was faster, and the needle pierced her skin before she could react. Pain came immediately, followed by terrifying clarity. She saw the membrane in her mind, a living web connecting all versions of the frontal across all timelines. "We are the infection," Bianca whispered. "And the antidote." The ship began to disintegrate. The walls melted into black liquid, exposing metallic bones that pulsed like arteries. Viter crumbled into crystals, his mouth forming silent words. The android, now a mass of wires and bioluminescent organs, crawled to IZA, handing her a fragment of the original hull. Error corrected, it croaked. Cycle interrupted. She held the fragment, and for a moment, the frontal stabilized, only to collapse in a violet light explosion. Time redefined itself. The ship, now a hybrid organism of metal and flesh, pulsed with a life that wasn't entirely its own. IZA, still holding the hull fragment, felt herself pulled into an invisible current that carried her back to the beginning. The command room walls vanished, replaced by an infinite void where stars shone like eyes watching. She knew, somehow, that she was no longer in space, but in a limbo between existences, where past, present, and future were only waves in an endless sea. In the center of this void, a figure emerged, an older version of herself, eyes filled with knowledge and sorrow. "You understand," she said, her voice echoing across multiple dimensions. "The frontal is not just a ship. It's a seed, a capsule of memory and purpose. And you, IZA, are the one who can decide if it rebirths or dies." Before she could respond, the void expanded, and everything was swallowed by darkness. When IZA awoke, she was back on the bridge, the radar showing the same red. But this time, she felt no fear. She knew the ship wasn't a destination, but a journey. With firm hands, she adjusted the controls and pressed the warp button. The frontal began to vibrate, and for a moment, she saw all versions of herself, each in a different moment, each walking towards the same destiny. And then, the ship vanished, leaving only a trail of violet light in the void of the cosmos.